Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Ahmed again for Avionics, and this is Mastering Ansible. This is section 4, working with playbooks. In the previous section, we have seen how we can work with Ansible without using playbooks, just using the command line, just using Ansible commands. In this section, we're going to start looking at playbooks in Ansible. So let's get started. Ansible playbooks or Ansible-playbook command is a powerful command. The following are the options used when you want to run the playbook as a specific user, for example. If you want to run the commands remotely using a specific user account, you can use the -u option. For example, ansible-playbook myplaybook.yml-u cidev. This means that I can run the Ansible playbook on the remote machine without using the default user, which is Vagrant in our case because we're using Vagrant. You can choose to use another user, but of course, this user has to be created on the remote machine prior to command execution. And sometimes we want to use sudo access to run commands as another user other than the login user. For this, you can use -u, but this time it is capital. If sudoing to another user will require a password, which is a login password, you can use the -k capital option. And this deserves a little explanation. We have already mentioned before that Ansible, when it works on remote machines, it uses the private public key authentication in order to authenticate to the remote machine. However, when you use sudo, let's have a look here, and let's say that we are on Vagrant SSH web server, for example. Sometimes, and according to the configuration, sudo may require a password. So if I said, for example, sudo cat/etc/password, here I can run sudo without using a password. So if I run sudo cat/etc/password, I'm not going to be asked for a password because this machine has been configured not to allow users using sudo to enter a password. However, in other machines, and by default, the default sudo configuration requires that if you use sudo and then some command, you're going to be asked for a password. And this password can be passed in to Ansible using the remote execution using Ansible-playbook that we have just covered now by adding the -u capital and then entering the password in the command line. A complete example of sudo may be Ansible-playbook myplaybook.yml, which is the playbook that we're going to use, -u capital testing1, which is the user, -k to make Ansible ask for a password. This is just a brief introduction to Ansible-playbook, how powerful it can be, and the different command line options that it can use. You can also target specific hosts using Ansible-playbook. We have already mentioned that the inventory file that exists by default in /etc/ansible/hosts contains different groups of servers and standalone host names. Those host names that do not belong to a specific group. All this can be contained in the hosts file or the inventory file in order for you to target specific hosts or specific groups. However, Ansible Playbook gives you an even much more control or a fine-grained control over the hosts that you use. This is done by using the --limit flag. Let's run lamp.yml on our web server machines, currently only one machine because we only have one web server now, by issuing the following command. Ansible-playbook lamp.yml-limit web. Let's have a look at this on our example system. So let's SSH to our client machine and let's add commands or a number of commands to our playbook in order for it to work. So let's say hosts all and tasks let's say is present. So our lamp file may look like this. Save it, and then let's run Ansible Playbook. On the playbook, --limit web machines only, and then --list-hosts, which will give me the hosts that are going to be affected by this Ansible Playbook. In our case, it's just our web server, which is 192.168.33.20. If I said that I don't want to limit, and I'm going to run it on all the hosts, I'm going to have both of my machines, the database and the web server. Now, let's have a look at playbook variables. Adding tasks to be executed on remote servers and playbooks is a great way to orchestrate configuration management needs on your infrastructure. But sometimes we have more complex scenarios that require more than just plain tasks. Let's examine some playbook helpers that may come in handy when needed, and the most important one of those helpers are playbook variables. First, you may need to use variables inside the playbook. Variables may include usernames, groups, packages, and so on. Anything that you want to store in a variable and use it elsewhere in your playbook file, use it again and again in your playbook file, you can store it in a variable. And this variable can be inside your playbook itself, can be defined or declared at the start of the playbook, or it can be added to a separate file. And adding it to a separate file, of course, will give you a lot of flexibility and will give you a greater way to organize your code. So, how can you add variables? Let's add them first to our playbook file and see how they can be executed or how they can be used inside the playbook. So let's go to our example system. If you want to add variables to your playbook, you have two options: either to add them inline inside the playbook itself, or to refer to an external file. Of course, referring to an external file has its advantages of organizing your code and making this variable file flexible enough to be ported to different playbooks, different client machines, and so on. However, if you have a small number of variables, you needn't place them inside an external file. You can just add them to your own playbook. So let's open our LAMP playbook, and I have deleted its contents. Let's add again hosts. This time let our hosts be only limited to web hosts or the web server. And I can add here vars parameter. This vars parameter controls the variables that I am intending to use inside this playbook. Now, how can I add variables? I can add them as objects. Like, for example, if I had an object that is called person, this person can have a name of John Doe. This person can have a job of, say, system administrator, and he can also have an age of 30 years old. If I want to use this variable inside my playbook, I can add tasks, name, create, or let's say write down person details. Like, for example, if I want to write down this information to a file, I can use the copy module. The copy module can have a content of person name is, and now I can use the dot notation to extract the values of an object, like as follows: person dot name, like this. Notice here how I'm using the double curly braces as my delimiter. He works, like, let's say, comma, he works as, then person dot job, he is person dot age years old. Now let's define the destination for this file. It can be placed in /home /vagrant /person.text. And that's it. Let's exit. Let's run ansible -playbook lamp.yml, and if there are no mistakes, it should create a new file on the remote machine, the web server, containing the person details. Let's click enter. Okay, and something has been changed on the web server. Let's see what has been changed. Let's SSH to 192.168.33.20, and if you have a look, you're gonna see that we have a person.txt file. If I cat this file, I'm gonna see that person name is John Doe. He works as system administrator. He is 30 years old. Okay, and of course there is no new line character at the end of the line because I did not add a new line character. If I want to, I could add a \n at the end of the string in order to add a new line character to this string. And that brings us to the end of this lecture. At the start of the coming lecture, we are going to return back to our LAMP project. We are going to start installing PHP packages. So until then, see you next.